Good morning, my friends. How are you? This is Deepak again from the West Coast of the United States in California, continuing our discussions on how we can continue to participate in our healing, self-regulation, and homeostasis through a deeper understanding of the mind, brain, endocrine, immune, genetic axis. A lot of times I have emphasized the importance of reducing inflammation and maximizing immune capacity during this time for mitigating our risk for morbidity and mortality, or even the infection as the pandemic runs its life course. But I also want to share with you the biological basis or the scientific basis of how this happens. So I know that many people at this time are very impatient about anything to do with philosophy or metaphysics or deeper understanding of reality, and I'm trying my best not to go in that direction, although I'm tempted to, because ultimate healing only comes from understanding and experiencing fundamental reality of our own existence. But in the meanwhile, we have practical things to do, and we have practical steps to take for minimizing our risk of infection, but also, if somebody is infected, minimizing the risk of morbidity, mortality, inflammation, enhancing immune capacity. So while we focus on that, and I want to focus on that, I also don't want to get away from the deeper understanding of reality, which is the only way to experience ultimate healing, which includes, and I'll emphasize this, ultimate healing includes the loss of the fear of death. Paradoxically, by the way, when you lose that fear of death, then you lose all other fears, because every fear is a fear of the unknown. And once you are willing to step into the unknown in every moment of your existence, but at the same time in touch with the core of existence, which is your inner being, then you're holy and you're healed. But that's a deeper discussion, and right now I want to focus on both the theoretical aspects of biological healing, but also on some practical steps. So here we go. Some of this material, of course, you've seen before, heard before. If you've read Super Brain or Super Genes or The Healing Self or any of my blogs or other videos, some of this material may or may not be familiar to you. But let's go over it, okay, with your indulgence. So right now, if you watch my hand, this is a handy model. The pun is intended. This is a handy model of the brain, of the human brain, let's say. Okay, a handy model. By the way, this I give credit to this handy model to my friend neuropsychiatrist Dan Siegel, who first introduced me to this handy model. Okay, so here is, metaphorically speaking, the cerebral cortex. It is also known as the intellectual brain. This cerebral cortex is activated when we communicate, as in language right now, when we absorb information, but also when we engage in self-reflection, or when we activate our insight, our intuition, our creativity. Basically, this is the part of the brain, the bulk of the brain, that is activated. Right now, you are activating your cerebral cortex, and particularly the front part of it, which is called the frontal cortex, the latest in evolutionary development of the nervous system. Okay, so this is the intellectual brain, which is activated by thinking. Now, if I open my hand where you see my thumb, this is the emotional brain. It's also called the limbic brain. Limbus means cap, so it sits like a cap over the hypothalamus. And the limbic brain is also referred to as the emotional brain. The cortical brain, by the way, is only 4 million years old in evolutionary time. The limbic brain or the emotional brain is 100 million years in evolutionary development. Therefore, we are more likely to respond and react to emotions than to intellectual thinking. We pretend to be rational, but we are mostly emotional beings. We are riddled with emotions, good and bad. The limbic brain, in turn, connects with a part of the limbic brain called the hypothalamus, which then connects with the part of the brain called the pituitary, which is the master endocrine organ, which sends messages to other endocrine organs in the body, like the thyroid, the adrenal gland, the pancreas, and so forth. And this part of the brain, therefore, regulates our hormones and also activates genes that are responsible for the secretion of those hormones. Okay, so let's say this is the emotional brain. Okay, now where my thumb is, this is the midbrain. It's also referred to as the reptilian brain. So the intellectual brain is 4 million years old, the emotional brain is 100 million years old, and the midbrain is 300 million years old. It's also referred to as the reptilian brain. So it's present in all reptiles, and its main function is to protect us from danger. And so the midbrain, which can be active even when somebody is theoretically cortically brain dead, when they're on a ventilator or something, the midbrain is still active, and it controls the autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system, but it also controls things like electrolyte balance, hormones, etc., all below the level of our conscious awareness, of course influenced by the emotional brain, but the midbrain is primarily responsible for survival. The fight-flight response, the reactive response, and so on. That protects us from acute danger. You know, if somebody's attacking you, or you're subject to acute danger, the house is on fire, or there's an accident, or you're threatened by a mugger, then you either fight or you run or you freeze. So this is the reptilian brain. 300 million years old. 300 million years old. So what are we influenced by? We are influenced by our instinct to survive and our emotions, and to some extent by our rational mind, but mostly by the instinct to survive. And when this, when we get into a panic mode, then this midbrain goes crazy, and along with the emotional brain, it creates biological chaos. Increased secretion of adrenaline, cortisol, which compromises the immune system, and also makes us more susceptible to what are called cytokine storms, which are inflammatory storms, which actually are now being implicated in the acute precipitation of COVID-19 into morbidity and even mortality, associated with high levels of inflammatory markers acutely, and compromisation of the immune system, when both the emotional brain and the reptilian brain get overwhelmed. So now we have a direct link between what we're thinking, what we're feeling, and how we are reacting to what's happening in our biology, what's happening in the endocrine system, what's happening to growth factors, growth hormone, prolactin, neuropeptides, oxytocin, dopamine, opiates, serotonin, or adrenaline, cortisol. This is the integration of mind, brain, and genetic activity, and then hormones, and then immune system. It's all one feedback loop of self-regulation. So these feedback loops are actually cybernetic feedback loops, and mind, brain, body, genes, hormones, and immune function all function holistically as a unified process to keep our body in self-regulation. However, when we panic, when we get stressed, when we get overwhelmed, when there's sympathetic overdrive, then there's biological chaos, which means instead of secreting the good peptides, you are now secreting catecholamines, adrenaline, noradrenaline. Instead of having appropriate cortisol responses, you're getting too much cortisol, which is compromising the immune system. And then instead of having appropriate inflammatory responses, which are protective responses, one can get chronic inflammation and acute cytokine or inflammatory storms, which can raise the risk of morbidity and mortality. So this is the scientific basis. Thinking, feeling, reacting. Intellectual brain, emotional brain, instinctive brain. If they are all integrated in a self-referred feedback loop, a cybernetic feedback loop, then we are healthy and we minimize our risk of disease to the extent we can, even in the midst of a pandemic. So this is the basis. Thinking, feeling, reacting, and doing. So, practical. How does this make a difference? Well, of course, I'm not going to repeat the current recommendations: physical distancing, keep 6 feet away, wash your hands, don't touch your face. All these are very good principles of physical hygiene. But it is important to recognize that if you want your endocrine and autonomic and immune system in optimum self-regulation, then you need good sleep, you need mind-body integration, you need movement and exercise, you need healthy emotions, you need some connection with nature, you need a good, healthy, clean diet which maximizes the well-being of your microbiome, the 2 million to 20 million extra genes that you have in your body that correlate with the activity of your genes and ultimately the metabolites, inflammatory markers, and all the self-regulation biomolecules that are a result of gene activity. Now, our research and that of others has shown that meditation, including mindful awareness of sensory experience, mindful awareness of the body, mindful awareness of viscera, which is called interoception, mindful awareness of mental space, feelings and emotions and thoughts and memories and desires, and mindful awareness of the web of relationship, and mindful awareness of our connection to the ecosystem. That in itself induces self-regulation and decreases inflammation and enhances the activity of the immune system and activates the genes that are responsible for self-regulation while turning down the activity of the genes that are responsible for inappropriate inflammation. If you want, you can find these studies everywhere, including the Chopra Foundation website, and also just Google this information and you'll find it. Look at things like inflammatory storms or cytokine storms or mind-body interventions for reducing inflammation in the body or activating genes. You can find all this information on the internet, but it's also there on the Chopra Foundation website. So all these techniques are very important. But what I'm learning right now is one of the fastest ways to activate self-regulation is through pranayama or breathing. And I've mentioned this many times. Vagal breathing means slowing down your breath, breathing through the nose, and slowing down the breath to about 8 per minute. You can count on the inhale to 6, pause for 2, exhale for 4. Your breathing rate will go down to 8. Your heart rate variability will be increased, and everything will be activated. It's simple, but there are other pranayama techniques, and we can go over them. You can look at them up on the internet, on YouTube, and including the Chopra Well YouTube channel. Once again, it's called the Chopra Well YouTube channel. You can get all this information there as well, but on Google, on Chopra Foundation, open source, many places you can find this information. So today I want to emphasize the importance of breathing, but also the fact that yogasanas or yoga postures, and including the bandhas and the kriyas, are very important in selectively activating different branches of the vagus nerve. But for today, let's just use one formula. And I have spoken about this formula many times before, and this one formula is called the STOP formula, S-T-O-P. S stands for in the midst of any situation which you feel threatening or even slightly stressful, you stop. S stands for stop. Just for a few seconds. T, take 3 or 4 deep breaths and smile from head to toe. O, observe the sensations in your body or observe your breath. Okay. And then P, proceed with conscious choice making and conscious awareness. Do not impulsively react. Observe your reaction to react. Press the pause button and observe your reaction to react. S-T-O-P. Stop, take 3 deep breaths, smile, observe the sensations in your body, your breath, and then proceed consciously. Metacognition, conscious choice making, conscious volition, and conscious experience of raw experience without interpretation in the moment. Raw experiences, sensations, images, feelings, thoughts, perceptions. If you can do that, you will override your reactivity. And if you override your reactivity and if you remain centered in being, yogast kuru karmani, established in yoga, established in being, performing action, then your actions are less likely to be reactive, less orchestrated by the fight-flight response, orchestrated by the limbic system in the direction of love, compassion, joy, equanimity, empathy, and then also activated by love in action, volition, helping other people. Just that, being, feeling, thinking, reflecting, and doing consciously. Being, feeling, reflecting, thinking. Start this, and then we'll continue on our journey to healing. This is how we integrate mind, brain, body, gene activity, inflammatory markers, cytokines, metabolites, part of self-regulation. Self-regulation is a feature of every biological system. Every biological system. And ultimate self-regulation is complete self-awareness or being established in being. But these self-regulating ecosystems are present not only in our biology, in plants, in the earth, in the biosphere. And the ultimate message of this pandemic is that we need to embark on total well-being, which means well-being in our workplace, purpose and meaning, social well-being, emotional well-being, physical well-being, community well-being, financial well-being, all linked to the ultimate well-being, which is already happening at the level of the spirit, at the level of being. So take care, and we'll be in touch again tomorrow. Meanwhile, stay centered in your being. And if you can do that, you're helping yourself and you're helping the world. Okay? Take care, my friends.